Morning, everybody. Well, evening, afternoon, whatever time it is where you are when you're listening to this. All right, now, last time I was talking about the Jews being scaredy cats out in the wilderness. You know, they wouldn't go over and take the land that God had already given them. All they had to do is go grab it. And they wouldn't, because they said there were giants in the land. And the reason I called them scaredy cats is simply that's lack of faith. That's all that is. That's all it boils down to, is they just didn't have the faith, even though they witnessed all of those miracles. This is what I'm talking about right here, about why I called them scaredy cats. And they hadn't learned much since then. This is Samuel chapter 17. It's lengthy. I'm going to read some of it, but I'm going to read it as fast as I can, even though I speak Southern. All right, chapter 17, 1 Samuel. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shochoh and Azekah in Ephesdim, and you can read that for yourself. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Now, as the normal, a cubit is 18 inches. It's the measurement between the tip of your elbow and the tip of your middle finger. It's, for them, it was about 18 inches. And that's probably worldwide. You know, some people are longer, like mine is longer, but anyway, so that would be 6 cubits would be about 9 feet. And a span, again, depending on who's doing the measuring, is somewhere around 6 inches. So this guy was 9.5 feet tall, basically. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and you servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall you be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. He had 8 sons, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. Now, I have to admit, this guy sounds pretty scary with all that stuff. His size, his armor and everything. It's going to be hard to beat a guy like that with a sword or a spear, right? Okay. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left. Trying to turn my page here, it's stuck. Well, y'all can be looking this up while I'm doing this. Sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all of the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should divide the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and then Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, Why camest thou down hither, and with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride in the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner, and the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And the Lord was with him. Probably most of us have heard the end of this story right here, or at least most of it. You know, David went and got 5 smooth stones out of a riverbed, got his slingshot, went out there, hit him in the forehead, and the rock buried itself in his skull. That's a pretty good swing, don't you think? But that's not the end of this. But in verse 47, he said, The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. That's where he got his faith from, is God, not himself. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Shoes on the other foot now, ain't it? They weren't scared of David. He just had 4 more stones to throw. And, you know, he wouldn't be able to fight very good with a sword of a guy that's 9.5 feet tall. That thing's going to be pretty heavy, right? So why were they scared? Because they knew God was with them. That's all you need to have faith, is to know that God is with you. And he is with you. If you're saved, if you accepted Jesus as your Savior, God is with you. And he wants you to go to heaven with him. Even if you're not saved, he still wants you to go to heaven with him, but that choice is yours. You have to accept Jesus as your personal Savior. But if you do, it's all good. I love y'all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.